recording as soon as we have the capability to do that. We'll send it over to you right away. So I would like to get started with further ado. We've got a lot to cover in just an hour, so we want to make sure we get to everything. So I would like to introduce myself. And my name is Elizabeth Miner. I am the Director of Events and Community Relations for Elevate Institute, and I'm also an elevation coach. My background is just under 20 years in the corporate world. I worked in the legal field with entrepreneurs and startups all the way to multinational companies like Thermo Fisher Scientific and Apple Inc. My experience is working in the corporate field on corporations, so I have a lot of that experience, also working with entrepreneurs. So, and my partner here, Hans, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that warm intro. And thank you guys for coming. I know it's late night wherever you are in the U.S. or beyond. Really appreciate you plugging in to this webinar. Really excited to have you on board. I'm the founder of Elevate Institute, also an elevation coach. I've been coaching over 10 years. My background is in the startup world, not a big company guy. I've been started a couple of companies. I've been in 5 other startups, exited 3 times, been through the roller coaster of everything that is soup to nuts, start to finish. And the culmination of that work led me to create this beautiful space that we call Elevate Institute, where we come together, share ideas, and find ways to help one another grow. You can check out the website elevateinstitute.co for more information. So again, thank you so much. I want to welcome you, and hopefully you guys can enjoy this beautiful 1-hour ride with us and connect with us after.
Fantastic, Hans. So let's get right into it and talk about what's in it for you. So tonight, we're going to take you through a small segment of a course we've developed, a 12-week program called Purpose to Profit. And where we're going tonight is, first we're going to do a little bit of flirting with purpose. And as Brene Brown says, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that the key is not about finding your purpose, but it's about following and playing with your interests. And that is what may lead you to the discovery of purpose. So we flirt with everything around purpose, and it's about following and playing with your interests, which may lead to the discovery of the purpose that we are all seeking. And that purpose-driven life is that fulfilling life. So we hope to, we hope to be able to give you some insights, and through the upcoming discussions and exercises that we might point you in the direction. So the other thing we're going to do in the process of flirting with this purpose, we're going to understand that there's certain narratives that we have been playing as tapes and concepts through we've picked up through our environment, through the way we grew up, through the media and those things around us. And by getting curious with these narratives that we have taken as truth, we get to see how they play out in our world, and we get curious about if they are continuing to serve us in our focus with moving through the process. So it's when we begin to question that we can begin to rewrite these narratives that play in our mind and create perspective shifts, the new view of the same item. It creates this exact shift of how we interact with those items. And so one of the modules in our course that we've picked to go into a bit with you today is from the module called Time Elasticity. And by really delving into this perspective shift on something like the concept of time, we find that we have more impact to the way that time affects us than we ever thought before.
Great. So the 12-week program that Elizabeth mentioned is represented here in one big slide, kind of give you the quick rundown of, again, this webinar is an intro for that 12-week course. It's a beautiful course. We've been using that course for probably a couple of years now, and we've had some phenomenal feedback, and so it's been structured, it's been honed. The core elements of this program we go through. Initially, it's the mindset. We put you guys in the right mindset. We kind of go back and forth with the different mindsets to be in when we're plugging into one or many aspects of our lives. There's the Elevate methodology that has been created about 3 years ago through, again, all the work that we've put together at Elevate Institute. So we'll go through that, and the perspective shift that Elizabeth spoke to, very, very core. Looking at the same thing from another perspective enables us to get so much more kind of feedback and variables to play with to kind of re-enter that space with, again, new mindset, new perspective. And in what Elizabeth spoke to, the unlearning aspect, we ask the whys. We continue to ask why. We get, again, to that common denominator, and we start unlearning past narratives, and we recreate new narratives to plug ourselves back into. And in that process, we create all these aha moments. And aha moments are ageless. You could have an aha moment at 15 or at 95. And those aha moments are altering, life-altering. And how do we capitalize on those? How do we notice them? How do we know to notice those aha moments? And we are using the 5 senses. In the work that we end up doing. It is kind of a mind, body, and soul thing. The first 6 weeks we call the Human Acceleration Program. That's the internal work. The second 6 weeks is the Thrive Business Accelerator, where we take strong business concept and apply what you've learned internally within yourself in application, whether it be in a product that you're building as an entrepreneur or a program or project you're working on as an intrapreneur within your company. Again, 12 weeks. Every week we have an hour session like this, and then you have coaching sessions along the way. So snippet of the program itself. We'll talk more about that later on in this webinar.
So great, thank you, Hans. So who is this for, and is this the right program for you? And this really is for everyone, starting with the beginner, for those people that are just entering or re-entering the workforce, because the landscape may have changed since the last time you were in it. So it's in the very beginning that you can use these perspective shifts to really create the career of your dreams. And so many people didn't get that opportunity right that first time. But it's also for the professional, those from mid-level to executive. And this really is to help you either do a great job at what you're currently doing. It's to help you understand how to be a better manager, or it's to allow you the skills and the perspective shifts to be able to move up the ladder and chain. But this is also especially great for that change maker, that person who has been in the workforce for quite some time, and they have moved through the corporate ladder and they're deciding that they want to make a drastic change, and this is the program for them. So does anybody have any questions as it relates to, whether or not this is a good program, or how this could be a good program for them based on the limited information that we've already provided?
One thing I also would like to add while you guys send us your questions is we want this to be very open. So anytime you have a question or an idea or a topic or something, just go ahead and put it in the message there and send it to us. the way that you can send us messages right now is you can click on people on the top right, and you can click on chat with either Elizabeth or myself and send us a message, and we'll definitely get to that. We kind of want this to be an open forum.
Great. And Hans, why don't you take this question for me? It is coming in from Sarah. She says, I've been working in a startup for about 4 years, and she's not sure if she's happy with where she is, and she's trying to make that decision.
It's a great question, Sarah. So thank you for asking that question. It really plays into I love the serendipitous nature of this work, but it plays well into this conversation today. So we go back to this idea of perspective. Your perspective about your situation is really giving you a certain output, a certain outcome. That outcome, again, is devised and designed by the narrative that is in your mind. And sure, there could be other certain variables within your area of work right now that you don't like, but it's not always the space or the place. It could be just how you look at it. So without really going deeper into this, but looking at some of those variables and then looking at yourself and how you interact with that, maybe you can get a certain perspective shift on that and see, is there another way for me to perceive the situation? Is there another way for me to approach the situation? And how am I really managing myself? And we'll talk more a little bit about emotional intelligence and the different variables of emotional intelligence and how that plays into our environment and how our environment affects our own perception of our work, time, our interactions. So, you know, there are places and ways to play around with that. We're going to do an exercise later in this hour around time, and that will give you an idea of what I mean by perspective shift, and that could be utilized in other aspects of how you are looking at this. So I hope that answers your question. If not, ping me again, and I'm happy to kind of go through more of what is floating up in my head right now. Cool. No other questions? All right. So we did say today was going to be on time elasticity, and what beautiful way to start, but to understand kind of some studies, some work that has already been done around psychology and time. That's the great thing about time perception. It is actually a study in psychology, and the way that we can look at the situation that we're in is to understand the many variables that float around within that situation, and then pull back and see how we interact within that situation. That kind of gives you kind of a full spectrum of things to play with. So the first note, 85% of our financial success is due to human engineering, where only 15% is due to technical abilities. So at the Carnegie Institute of Technology, they've done work on human interaction with success, and they looked at, you know, more of the discussions of EQ to IQ, and EQ continues to win. And the great thing about EQ is the beauty that of the fact that you can evolve your emotional intelligence through a process called plasticity. And again, taking that back, human engineering really quickly is just your own ability to look at the personal variables that make your personality up and how you interact within your environment. And so that's again under the emotional intelligence umbrella. The next thing, so people would rather, and again, more studies, people, Nobel Prize winning psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, really famous Israeli-American psychologist, did more work on this and realized that, guess what? People like to hang out with positive, fun people, and they like to do business with those people as well. And it doesn't matter if you're charging more than your competitor. If they like you, they will do business with you. So there's a tremendous amount of human connection, human-to-human connection in everything that we do. As much as that may sound cliche or too obvious, we tend to lose sight because we put profit in front of it. We put certain type of individual within a group above all else, rather than the interaction with our clients or customers, etc., in an elevated format. and this next one was really interesting. So the emotional intelligence book, everybody knows emotional intelligence. Travis Bradbury and Gene Grievous co-wrote a book on emotional intelligence. One of the main points in there is really interesting. So only a third of us, 36% of the people, can accurately identify their own emotions as it happens. So can you imagine a third of us traversing through life, at work, whatever it is, we're basically having others experiencing us with the idea of what we think we're projecting out. And only a third of us are correct. So 2/3 of us are walking around thinking we're actually promoting a certain level of energy, experience to others, when in fact we're actually wrong. So again, a big idea and a big factor, and a lot of studies that came out of a book that was written by a Harvard Business Review around executives and managers who, when they get tested in terms of what they think their interaction is with their environment, the majority of them were completely off. So their subordinates, their employees were saying something completely different. So the importance of knowing thyself, again, very, very paramount in your success in your day-to-day. Rutgers University, social and emotional intelligence was significantly more important to professional success and prestige than IQ alone. Again, more data, more information that goes into why one is definitely better than the other, though both are important. It's not to say that IQ is not necessary in how we kind of tackle success. And now getting into time, so then how does time play into this? So again, emotionally, big play on how we interact with one another, how we change our environment. Well, guess what? The effects and the perception of time is affected by our emotions. So our emotions really affect how we perceive time. Our emotions are affected by our mood, our age, and our environment. So the last 2 points on the time perception and the speed of time, those are the main points. So we get to interact with time in the way that we feel about our environment. And the age part plays in. The older we get, studies have shown that time moves a lot quicker than when we were younger. And our mood, of course, has a tremendous change. If we have fear or excitement or anxiety, time tend to go fairly quickly. So again, a lot of these, and there are tons and tons of research that we continue to play with and we talk about in different webinars and different seminars. But these are kind of fun anecdotes, just kind of ideas of looking at how our own emotions really affect every aspect of our life, and how just that part can really affect what we're talking about today, time, and why we use time and emotions in this particular slide. But again, as I said, the great thing about our own emotional intelligence is we can learn to grow that. We can, through the process of plasticity, the brain goes through some changes through individual practices, and that's something that is always phenomenal, and it's always great because we're never too stuck in one place. That also promotes a growth mindset in all of us. So what does that do? That gives us perspective shift. So understanding some of the concepts of how we interact with one another and how our emotions affect our own success, and how that can affect our perception of love, of time, of our career, of our finances. Again, it plays across the full gamut of your life categories. And when we do that and we understand it from A to Z, we can slowly understand how we can get new perspective shifts, because we're unlearning our past narratives, and we're plugging into kind of this new narrative that basically speaks to what we want. We start creating a new reality for ourselves. So that is what I mean by perspective shift. So a little more facts about time, because we can't get enough. So as I mentioned, we flow through time very linearly. We go from point A to point B to point C. Time, as you know, is the fourth dimension. We can barely perceive the third dimension, let alone the fourth dimension. So how we interact with time and how we learn about time and how time affects us, it's actually huge, because as we know, we can get really stressed out, and we say things like, well, time is money, time is stressful, time is finite. But it really behooves us to get a better understanding of time, just a little bit, just so we know that we can play with it slightly differently, maybe get esoteric or existential a little bit, but that really helps our emotions and how we deal with time, so it can enable us to be a little bit more successful in the things that we do. So there is a difference between measure time and perceive time. So as we talked about, perceived time is affected by our environment, our mood, other people. And measure time is, you can measure time. It takes us an hour to get from here to here, here to here. But that measurement gets, again, affected by our own perception of it. So if you're working on a large project and you want to not stress out about it, there are things that you can do, exercises that you can do, ways to kind of think about it, get new perspective shifts so that when you do this work, your work will be much better. What you end up producing, how you talk to people, whether it be in a meeting, it just all gets enhanced, it all gets better. Two things I want to talk about. So the main neurotransmitters that are really playing a big role in our own perception of time is dopamine and basically adrenaline, norepinephrine. So those two neurotransmitters, very important in our perception of time. So again, the fight or flight, you get that feeling and time is just really quick. From A to Z, you're pretty much done. The reason why I mentioned that is, again, understanding, neuroscientists just dive deep into this and love to continue to understand this new development in the study of the mind and how we interact with time. Also, I did mention that the time perception is an actual study in psychology. So biopsychology, it's sometimes called in neuroscience, or physiobiology. Tons of papers on there. I would suggest you guys, for fun, I guess it's really, again, if time is a big issue for you, it's really, really interesting to just kind of get more insight into how humans interact with time, this fourth dimension, and that way we're able to really play around with kind of mastery in time, or at least mastery in our own success within time. The one thing that I also want to mention, the last thing that I want to mention that's really, really interesting is that there is no exact now. So, I'm sure you guys have heard of the book, The Power of Now, and be in the now. Now is the way to calm ourselves down and be in the moment. Well, as true as that is, and why that actually works is you're kind of foregoing the past and you're not really worrying about the future. You can really focus in on your current task. What I mean by there is no exact now, your conscious mind is, neuroscientists have found out that it's a third of a second ahead of your conscious mind. So your unconscious mind knows exactly what's going to happen before your conscious mind knows this. So what's amazing is every time we perceive the now, we're already behind. We're already a third of a second behind. So these moments, and that particular moment, that particular tidbit of information is always exciting because you kind of let go of the idea that you're always in control. Because we're not. We're just following our intuition, or we're following this pre-programming. And that's why when Elizabeth mentioned the unlearning part, it's really, really important to go through the unlearning of our past narratives to see what this program is that's basically dictating in how we interact in a meeting, how we interact in a tough situation when we're building our company, or when we're dealing with tough bosses or tough clients. Again, tons of stuff that we can talk about when it comes to time and time facts. And just remember, when we connect time to money, time to stress, time being a finite thing, we're putting certain values on time. So again, it behooves us to really understand just the basis of what time really is, so we can create a stronger value to time and really relate that value back to us in a way that is healthier for us, and in ways that really pushes us forward in the right, kind of the right way, and something that's in a way slightly controlled by us. And next is, again, lots of talking. We want to pause here really quickly and just see if you guys have any questions. If so, great. If not, we can continue. There's been a lot of discussion around time, and then, we're going to make a connection of why, that conversation is important in the exercise that we're about to do. So, Elizabeth, I think this is you. If you don't have any questions, we can continue to chug along here.
All right. So let us move on to some exercises. If there's no questions, one of the things that I see on the poll is that time management is definitely a concern for you all, which is great, seeing as this is the item that we chose to work on today out of the modules. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead over to the handouts and to look at that first handout, which is the weekly time snapshot. And if you could download that and take a look at that, what this is, and it's a very simple form, but what this is, a snapshot to give you a visual understanding of what your current time management is. We cannot begin to, figure out the narratives that are working in our lives until we understand what we have as a baseline snapshot. And I know there's a personal trainer on here. I know there's a financial coach on here. I mean, we all start with the basics, right, where we start with the initial beginning of where do we look at today. So the first line of this is about your estimated hours that you do each week for each of these items, okay? And this is a big overview, I understand that, but to sit down and take a few moments to figure out what you think your estimated hours per week are spent doing these activities. What we would do in the program, we go further into that when we look at the actual hours. But if you'll just take a moment now and take a look and fill out your current estimated hours that you are currently spending on these items. And I'll just give you a few minutes to do that because we're going to use them on the next handout. And while you're at it, to go ahead and download that second handout if you wouldn't mind. Go ahead, Hans. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say what's great about this one is there's a level of simplicity around this particular exercise, but when we have used this in the past, one of the common themes is, oh, well, this is too simple, it's obvious, I know what's going on. But as we go through the exercise, then we start seeing a bit of aha moments, because our own perception of where we are to our own reality, there's sometimes a delta. There's sometimes a space in between. And even a half-hour difference is a half-hour gain. And how, again, we interact with that plays a big role in allowing ourselves to go through what may seem mundane, what may seem really easy, what may seem silly, but it really is that simplicity that will give us these aha moments that we're kind of looking for.
And it's really with the simplicity that we're able to help people get to these perspective shifts. There's so many people trying to make this so complicated, right, Hans? And it just doesn't have to be that way. And so by going back and stripping it down to something very simple and easy to begin to work with, you really have a much better opportunity to really uncover some of the basics. So we're going to go ahead and move on to this next worksheet. And this is a time matrix. Again, this is something that you very well may have seen or possibly used before, but it's when you use it in conjunction with the perspective shift that you really get these points. So what I'd like you to do is take the items from that last sheet and start to put these into your matrix. A little description about what the categories should be. This urgent and important. In the idea of a firehouse, because it's an easy, recognizable analogy, the urgent and important would be firefighting, right? These are crisis items. These are deadline driven, where the deadline is approaching, and these are just critical projects, right? Because they are critical to moving the mark forward. They are things that have to be done, and they are important. And then you move on to the next quadrant, which is non-urgent but important. And in the case of the firehouse, this would be, fire truck maintenance, right? Because it may not be urgent, however, it is definitely able to, it has to be done in order to be able to fight fires effectively. So these are the habitual things. These are the things that when you're looking for new opportunities, cultivating personal growth, doing your recreation, all these things are not necessarily urgent, but they are certainly important to your well-being and your future. So then you go down to the bottom left-hand quadrant, which is the non-important yet urgent. And this is what we call the deceptively urgent, right? This is in the example of the firehouse, this is the little girl that calls the firehouse because her cat is in the tree, right? So this is urgent to that little girl, right? And this is certainly something a firefighter can do and has been known to do. However, this isn't their critical job. This isn't moving them forward in what they are designed to do. So a lot of times we find that this is the type of thing that causes a lot of stress. And again, if we have the right perspective on what's going on, we can either slow down time or create time. When we create stress, we understand we are speeding up time. And in order to slow that down, getting things into the right category and understanding that everything is not urgent and important. Some of these are urgent and not important tasks. We actually are able to manufacture more time for ourselves by just knowing better where these all fit in. And that final category, the non-urgent, non-important, those are the things like Netflix binging and, social media that we all get stuck in from time to time, video games, TV shows, all those things, emails that people just seem to sit through and spend so much time using up, when not all emails really, all these sale flyers and all this stuff that comes through your email. So again, this type of a matrix is designed, and the way that we use it in this time elasticity is to be able to take control of where your items are going and to take a look at where they currently sit today. And if you feel like you don't have enough time, do you have so many things that are in those elements that are causing stress and causing time to speed? Are you doing things that if you shifted your emotion and you shifted the way you looked at it, would it be able to be completed in a much better way? We do better work when we're in better control of our emotions. So we also then take this same matrix and we can apply it to each area of our life. And next slide shows this wheel of life. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. And so by taking either the life wheel as a whole and at a macro level, plugging that into your time matrix and figuring out, what of those elements belong where and how that's affecting how you're perceiving these items, then you can create or slow down more time. And you can find that there's too many things in one category that don't belong there. And so by shifting them out to the proper category, you understand you've found that half an hour that Hans was talking about, right? And you find a half an hour here and there, that's like gold, So in order to really benefit, you can print out as many of those matrices, and you can take this at that macro level and figure out how you're planning out your life wheel and the items that belong in your day, the life categories in your fulfilling life. And then you can take it down that next step and really dive into these unique categories and really start to look at how things fit in the way that you're addressing them, and how your perspective, what you bring yourself to, and the narratives you're playing about these, how they're all making the process either better or worse, and how you can affect it to be a much better process in each step of the way. So in playing around with this, and I know I've been talking through this, but as you're filling these out, does anybody have any results that they choose to share?
I just got pinged by Josh. So Josh actually looked at his work bracket and realized that the amount of work, well, I'm trying to paraphrase here. So the amount of work spent after work can be reduced and put more into, there's a level of urgency that can be removed from that. So Josh, that's actually great, because the amount of time that we end up spending post-work, when we say, oh, 40 hours a week is turned into 50, turned into 60, yeah, so, work is going to be there the next day. There are certain things, obviously, that are urgent, and everything, and every person that I've worked with always likes to speak about the urgency of their work and how glorifying their busy is when they come back to work the next day. It's really important to take ownership on your own personal time and say, as urgent as this may seem, my life is also urgent and important and important, and so I need to put more time into that, whether it be family time, health, cooking, whatever that may seem. So nicely done on really, again, when you really see the numbers in front of you, it makes that change. When you really see the fact that, holy cow, I spend more time than I actually thought working after work, that needs to stop, or that needs to be reduced. So that's a great point.
Right, and then the stress that creates in your relationships or in your after work items that are potentially getting neglected, that then brings that whole another level where you're not bringing your best self, right?
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So here's kind of a fun question. This came from Carrie. She said, "What if everything seems important? How do I figure out what is really not important when I feel like everything is important?" That's a great question. So when you do visualization exercises and everything seems important, that's great. I mean, in your life, that at least you're able to see it, but there's just one of you. And if there's just one of you, and again, finite number in the day, 24 hours, where, a portion of that you're sleeping, a portion of that you're working, a portion of that, depending where you live, is commuting, you're left with a few hours, right? And so within those hours, you take the visualization exercise that you're doing about all the different moving variables in your life, and if you must put them from most important to least important, not to say that they're not important, it's just least important, that'll give you an idea of how to look at your life in a snapshot and how you can prioritize. Every single thing that you'll put up on this visualization board, you can put a timestamp next to it. So whether it be, cooking, right, that's important to you, it'll take this much time of the day. Commuting, this much time of the day. Working out, this much time of the day. Family time, this much time of the day. You put that in order of importance and start rearranging how you approach your life by this order of importance. Try that exercise, try that out. I think it would help you understand that although everything in your life may in fact be important, there's just one of you and you're only capable of dealing with a handful of those things.
Yeah, and just to add on to what you're saying, Hans, is I've done a lot of work with people in organizing that kind of thing, and oftentimes what we talk about is, yeah, that's really important. Is it important now? And that's something that you can play around with a little bit as you're looking at your schedule and you're looking about how many hours, because oftentimes when people do their estimated hours of sleep, I think this is where we see the most disparity between what they estimate they're getting per week and then the actual hours, right, Hans? So we get this sense that we're getting all this sleep, and it turns out that we're really not getting all this sleep because we're trying to fill our days too much with doing too many things. And sometimes the answer is, this is important. This is not the time now.
Right. Absolutely. I have another question from Stephanie, which is pretty much similar to the rest of the questions. My work-life balance is not as it could be. What is one way I could tackle that? And again, that plays into time, and that plays into some of the things that we said before. There isn't just one way to tackle that, but that there is this tremendous intent of saying, here are my work blocks, here is my personal life blocks, and here is my prioritization of what I need to do to get things done. And there are certain things that I hold near and dear that fill up my soul, that re-energize me. Put those at the very top of your personal life, right? And make sure that those get incorporated in your day-to-day. Sometimes you'll have to, so one of the things that one of the folks that we worked with is an executive at a fairly large company. He was the CEO of a company, and he ended up taking an hour early on, just an hour early to wake up an hour earlier. Just that 1 hour a day freed him up to do so much more later in the day. If there's something about your highest hour of productivity, he found out that it was early in the morning for him. And so by doing that, realized he completely changed his life by doing a 1 hour shift. So in that 1 hour, he produced a few hours of work, 2 to 2.5 hours of work that ended up freeing that time later on, and was able to incorporate more family time, which is what he wanted. So again, that snapshot of what you can see in terms of your life, prioritizing those variables, and really trying to be very open, very vulnerable, very honest with yourself, and basically say, what are the things that are really important to me, that re-energize me, that refuel me, and then plugging those into your day-to-day. And yes, there needs to be sometimes adjustments. We can't look at our current timeline and how we spend our day and say, well, this is it, and we need to add some more stuff. Sometimes you need to remove, sometimes you need to adjust, sometimes you need to wake up an hour earlier. But at the end of the day, that shift, and though it may seem really ridiculous to wake up an hour early, was one of the best things that ended up happening to him. And he completely shifted, and emotionally, mentally, and even physically, he became very energized and just a more pleasant person to be around. So small adjustment, a whole lot of change. There's something that I do want to say about that adjustment as well, is that I conceptualize this 1 degree adjustment. So where we are present in our day right now, if we make a 1 degree shift, today we decide to say we're going to do one small thing differently. Think of our experience, our timeline as a circle, and we're standing in the middle of the circle. If we make 1 degree shift and start moving in a different radius, the first few steps don't seem very large. The first few steps seem like nothing is happening. But as we get to the circumference of that circle, we look at the space. When we hit the circumference, the space of where we are to where we could have been if we didn't change, that arc, that angle on that arc is huge. So think of it that way. That 1 degree difference that you make today is a tremendous shift in where you're going to be in a year from now. So thinking long-term in personal development, taking ownership, creating very strong intent is really what will make that lasting shift and lasting effect. Great question, Stephanie.
That was fantastic. So really the first step towards getting somewhere is to decide that you're not going to stay where you are. And I mean, this is just such a poignant quote, but it is but it is where we have to start. It goes back to what we said at the very beginning, to just get that baseline of where you are standing currently today. What narratives are playing for you today? Where are you finding your biggest aha moments, and then capitalizing on them? And how do we take those moments and those items, those 1-degree shifts, and make the biggest difference and impact in your days? And if you don't know where you're starting from, we have no idea where you're going to end up. But if we can get that baseline, start to look at those narratives, and then you can start to assess, do those narratives still serve you? And is that the story that you want to continue to tell yourself? Or is this, by shifting your perspective on something, how much of a difference can you make with that one small perspective change? And in our experience, it's been great. And it does make the difference between successful businesses and failing businesses. It makes the difference between people who can pivot and people who are stuck in their same direction. It makes the difference between people who are stuck in ego and people who are actually vulnerable enough to accept that maybe there's a different angle to look at it from, and then they are able to move forward in a different direction because they're not stuck to this one direction. So.
That's absolutely right. The kind of the last note that I do want to make is the first step can always be very difficult, and not for any other reason than the comfort and the familiarity that we feel of where we are, no matter how much we're complaining about where we're not. So what ends up fueling you in your transition is really taking that first step and saying, you know what, I'm going to try it. This is my life. This is one life that I have to live. Why don't I elevate my own existence? Why don't I try to be a better human being? Why don't I do what I can do today to leave this place better than I came into it? So this 12-week program is designed to do just that and give you kind of a full spectrum of tools and ideas. You know, if you're wearing that Batman belt, we're going to give you all the tools to kind of put on that belt to be able to go out and really take on the world, defined by you, and it's really, really exciting. The program itself is 12 weeks. It's a fully refundable at any time. We want this to be extremely accessible. We want this to be something that is, we have if you go to this link, the elevateinstitute.co/human acceleration, you have more information on that. And it's $999 for 12 weeks. It's $83 a week. You'll get coaching with both Elizabeth and I, and an hour of work specifically in each module. And we're really, really, really excited to have you part of this. We have a limited number, a limited space. And I'm not just saying this, but there are a few seats left. I think we have about 10 to 12 seats left. So again, very excited to have you on board. If you want to reach us, Elizabeth Miner at elevateinstitute.co, me, Hans Curdy, Hans at elevateinstitute.co. And if you need more information, the link is also on the bottom. And that is our chat for today. We really thank you guys for putting up with us in this last hour, and what probably seemed a very long day for you guys. Again, I appreciate you coming in later in the day, whether you're in the West Coast, it's coming to 8 o'clock slowly, and if you're in the East Coast, you need a big hug from us. It's fairly late over there. So again, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you all very much. We've enjoyed this time, so appreciate you coming along for the ride.
All right. Have a good night, all.